This podcast contains descriptions of violence against children and adult language and is not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Suffer the Little Children, the podcast giving voices back to the victims of child abuse murder and their families. I'm your host, Lane, and this is episode 197, Quortney Kley Updates with Greta Morgan. Back in 2021, both episode 49 and minisode number 3 featured the story of 20-month-old Quortney Kley. On February 25, 1997, Quortney was sexually abused and murdered by her mom's boyfriend, Cayce Williams. It took 9 years for the legal case to end, with Williams accepting a plea agreement in 2006, and he was released in 2021 after spending only 24 years behind bars for the violent sexual assault and murder of a toddler. In this episode, you'll hear my recent conversation with Quortney's mom, Greta Morgan, who has some disturbing updates for us about Quortney's killer and some shocking revelations about Illinois' sex offender registry. Quortney's case is already overwhelming in its injustice, but today's episode will boggle your mind. If you haven't yet listened to episode 49 and minisode number 3, you should listen to them first for the full story. I'll include a link to those in the show notes. Before we get to the updates, here's a quick recap of Quortney's case. It was around 10 p.m. on Tuesday, February 25, 1997, when 23-year-old Cayce Williams carried 20-month-old Quortney Kley into an Elgin, Illinois emergency room. Quortney, who was unresponsive, was the daughter of Cayce's girlfriend, Gretta Morgan, who had known Cayce since high school and trusted him to watch her 2 daughters while she went to work. In fact, he had left 5-year-old Christina in the car to take Quortney into the hospital. Greta had no idea that the man she lived with and trusted with her children was capable of the hideous crime he committed against her helpless little girl. After Quortney was pronounced dead on arrival, Cayce went berserk and was arrested at the hospital for disorderly conduct. He was then interrogated at the Elgin Police Department, where he described the unthinkable acts he performed against the tiny, red-haired, blue-eyed baby. Cayce was subsequently charged with several counts, including predatory criminal sexual assault and first-degree murder. The case took an unthinkable 9 years to adjudicate. The defense filed motion after motion, constantly delaying the court process. Cayce fired attorneys one after the other, each time necessitating a new attorney to step in and familiarize themselves with the case before it could proceed. Meanwhile, Cayce's family, mainly his father Michael and one of his brothers, Scott, continually harassed and threatened Greta, somehow blaming her for Quortney's sexual assault and murder instead of the actual perpetrator. At long last, in May 2006, 33-year-old Cayce Michael Williams accepted a plea agreement, pleading guilty to 1 count each of murder and predatory criminal sexual assault. He was sentenced to a total of 48 years in prison and required to register for life as a sex offender. He would also be required to wear an electronic monitoring device for his 3 years of mandatory supervised release. But Cayce's sentence was not as it seemed. At the time of Quortney's murder in 1997, Illinois' truth in sentencing law required violent criminals to serve 100% of their sentence, 85% for sexual crimes. This meant Cayce should have spent almost 47 years behind bars, minus the 9 years he spent in the Kane County Jail until that point. However, in 1999, the Illinois Supreme Court ruled the law unconstitutional because of the way it was passed, and because of this, Cayce and about 2,500 other felons would only have to complete 50% of their sentences. As a result, Cayce Williams was released from prison on February 25, 2021, the 24th anniversary of Quortney's murder. For what it's worth, Illinois has now revised the truth in sentencing law, so violent criminals are once again required to serve their full sentences. Cayce wanted to live with his father, Michael, in Carpentersville, Illinois, after he was paroled. Michael is also a convicted felon who served time for dealing cocaine, and Cayce was prohibited from living with him. Instead, he was paroled to the address of his brother's girlfriend on Briarwood Road in Crystal Lake, Illinois, where an elementary school sat just outside the 500-foot radius where Cayce, a registered sex offender, was barred from living. The brother, Scott Robarge, who lived in the house, was also a convicted felon. One of his felonies involved threats he made to Greta in 1998 after his brother murdered her daughter. It seems being despicable runs in the Williams family. Understandably, the neighborhood was up in arms about having a sexually violent baby killer living in their midst, amongst many families with children, and immediately created a petition that read in part, "Concerned residents of Crystal Lake demand reversal of this early release and immediate removal of this cancer of society." Cayce had the audacity to speak to a reporter outside the Briarwood Drive home, claiming Quortney's death was an accident and that his confession to police was coerced. That doesn't account for his guilty plea or the fact that he admitted in open court during his sentencing that he sexually assaulted and murdered Quortney, but who's keeping score, right? Well done, Northwest Herald, for giving a disgusting child rapist and murderer a voice instead of his toddler victim. I'm not sure which was more effective, the Crystal Lake petition or a phone call from Greta Morgan to Cayce's parole officer mentioning Scott's conviction for harassing and threatening her, but either way, Cayce was swiftly removed from the neighborhood. Before that, however, McHenry County Sheriff Bill Prim told a reporter, "I understand the residents' concern with Williams' release into our community. I want to reassure the residents that we proactively and continually verify all of our registered sexual offenders' information to ensure that they comply with the Illinois Sexual Offender Registration Act." Well, it seems not so much, but I'll get to that in a moment. First, here's a quick but oh-so infuriating update. On January 2nd, 2024, which was still part of his 3-year mandatory supervised release, or MSR period, Cayce Williams was arrested after being involved in a car accident while intoxicated with another felon as his passenger. He was placed back in prison under the assumption that the crime violated his parole. When Greta reached out to the Prisoner Review Board's Victim Services Division, asking if Cayce's prison sentence would be extended due to the parole violation, she received this response, which has my jaw on the floor. "Possibly, but usually, coming back on a violation, it cuts time in half. So we can't say until he's seen by the parole board and they determine a date of release from his sentence." What did that sound like to you? To me, it sounds like the representative was saying that violating parole usually shortens prison time or parole duration for Illinois felons. That sounds crazy, right? You'd think. But that is, in fact, what happened. Instead of his parole expiring on February 25th, Cayce was discharged from the Illinois Department of Corrections upon the expiration of his sentence on January 29th, 2024, almost a month early. You cannot make this shit up. I looked at this every which way, upside down and sideways, and there's no getting around it. Parolees in Illinois are routinely rewarded for violating their parole, just as Cayce Michael Williams, the rapist and murderer of a toddler, was. How are you feeling right now? Feel free to pause and take a break, scream into your pillow, throw down a few shots or whatever it takes. I think I'll go do all of those things. Now back to that whole sexual offender registry business. It has come to Greta's attention that Cayce Williams is not living at his registered address on South Perry Avenue in Chicago. He's living at 36 Elm Avenue in Carpentersville, a home owned by Michael G. Williams Sr. Yep, he's living with his father, the same felon he was forbidden to live with in 2021. There's photographic evidence of Cayce's presence there on multiple dates and times. Cayce himself has told several locals that he is living at his father's address. What's that? A direct violation of his registration requirements? Why, yes, it is. By law, Illinois sex offenders are required to provide the Illinois State Police with information about their residence, employment, school, and travel. The law states that sex offenders must report changes of address within 3 days to the law enforcement agency where they last registered and the agency in their new location, even if they move out of state. Supposedly, failure to comply with these laws can result in arrest and incarceration. Not so in the case of Cayce Williams, apparently. For the record, 36 Elm Avenue is a 5-minute walk from a daycare center. It's also a 3-minute drive from Lil Kickers and Skills Institute, which offers soccer classes, camp, birthday parties, and other programs for kids aged 18 months to 12 years. Meanwhile, according to the Illinois Sex Offender Registry, Cayce Williams is still officially registered as living at 6655 South Perry Avenue, Apartment 2C in Chicago's Englewood neighborhood, a 12-unit building where, according to the downloadable version of Illinois' full sex offender registry, there have, at times, been over 100 registered sex offenders supposedly crammed into these 1 to 3 bedroom units together. No zoning, no business license, and no official designation as a transitional facility. It's like the Wild West of sex offender housing, with innocent women and children living among them, families who weren't informed when they moved in that the building was practically Grand Central Station for dangerous criminal perverts. According to an article on the Englewood portal, Amir Mostafa owns 9 of the 12 units in the South Perry building through his company Link Remarketing LLC. Mr. Mostafa is also the president of the 6655 South Perry Condominium Association. Are sex offenders in Illinois allowed to live together? CBS 2 found that per Illinois state statute, people convicted of a sex crime offense who were on parole or probation should refrain from residing at the same address or in the same condominium unit with another person he or she knows is a convicted sex offender, unless the location is transitional housing. 6655 South Perry is not. In fact, according to the Illinois State Police website, at this time, there are no licensed transitional housing facilities for sex offenders in Illinois. Cayce Williams is no longer on MSP, so I suppose he could legally live in the South Perry Ave building now, but he was registered as living there as far back as early 2021, when he was fresh out of prison. In May 2021, CBS 2 spoke with Mr. Mostafa after a fire burned through the roof of the South Perry Avenue building. No one was injured. Mr. Mostafa told reporter Dana Kozlov that the men have a right to live and rent in the building or wherever they are able. How noble of him. The reporter also spoke to a registered sex offender who lived in the building and wore an electronic monitoring device. He told her, "You have to check in, you have to check out. You have to take mandatory sex offender classes. People in here cry every night. They're sorry for the things that they did. They served time. I'm 31 years old. I've got to constantly explain the actions of an 18-year-old kid. If you believe that people can change, give them a chance, man." I'm an extremely empathetic person. I also believe in rehabilitation and that people can change. But even more firmly, I believe that certain offenses are irredeemable, including the rape and murder of a baby. So, Mr. Registered Sex Offender, this is for you and your crying cronies. I did find it interesting that the man said sex offenders had to check in and check out of the building, even though it's not a licensed transitional housing facility, and the owner, Mr. Mostafa, claimed there wasn't a nonprofit organization running an operation out of the building. However, Englewood residents found that in 2021 at least, a nonprofit leased several units from Mr. Mostafa's company, Link Remarketing LLC, specifically to house MSR offenders from the Illinois Department of Corrections. That nonprofit would be New Beginnings Recovery Homes Incorporated, a Chicago-based 501c3 organization whose website indicates it assists men who are deemed socially liable, providing food, clothing, social, supportive, and case management services, medical and psychiatric attention, medication, and medical equipment. Socially liable, like registered sex offenders, perhaps? Mr. Mostafa, what was that about no nonprofit organization running out of your building? Oh, in case this wasn't all unbelievable enough, the South Perry building is a 3-minute walk from Periwinkle Playlot Park, a local playground. It's also a 12-minute walk from Parker Community Academy, an elementary school that shares grounds with Englewood STEM High School. Hey, at least it's not within 500 feet. An extra few yards should prevent any of the 110 or so violent sexual criminals who supposedly live at 6655 South Perry Ave from taking a 3 to 12-minute stroll and picking out whatever flavor of underage victim they prefer, right? By the way, studies have shown that the sexual recidivism rate for this kind of offender is estimated to be around 10 to 15% within the first 5 years of their release from prison. Some studies with longer follow-up periods have found that rates increase over time, up to 20 to 40% after 10 to 15 years. One more thing I just wanted to mention. In Washington state, a facility called the Special Commitment Center, or SCC, houses sex offenders who have completed their prison sentences but have been deemed likely to reoffend as sexually violent predators. The facility is located on the otherwise unpopulated McNeil Island. So, in essence, Washington state has an island specifically for housing its most dangerous sex offenders, even after their sentence expires, until or unless they're deemed no longer a risk to society. I can think of 49 other states that might want to consider such a setup. In 2021, Englewood community leaders, activists, and citizens flooded the neighborhood with flyers and created a petition asking the city to shut down the South Perry building. Just like the Carpentersville Police and the McHenry County Sheriff's Office did when told about Cayce Williams' blatant flaunting of the Illinois sex offender laws, the city of Chicago did nothing. Listen. I am not providing this information to encourage anyone to harass, stalk, or threaten Cayce Williams, his family members, or any other registered sex offenders, so please don't do that. I'm providing this information so residents of Carpentersville and Illinois as a whole can protect themselves and to raise awareness about this unlicensed supposed transitional housing facility in Chicago and others like it, which house dozens of these potentially dangerous deviants. And that's not the only problem I'm talking about today. I recently had the pleasure of catching up with Greta 4 whole years after our first conversation, and I know you'll find the things we talked about as interesting and disturbing as I did. Speaking of unthinkable twists, just wait till you hear where Casey's reportedly working now. I promise you won't see it coming. After this quick sponsor break, you'll hear my recent conversation with Greta Morgan. Stay tuned till the end of the episode to find out what we're doing to help change these Illinois atrocities. It has been a while.
And so much has happened. And at the same time, nothing.
Well, you've learned a lot. That's what it is.
Oh, no kidding. And there's so much that sometimes I can't even remember it all. And even going back and looking at notes and everything else, it's hard to keep track because it's just so crazy.
It's like you're being professionally gaslit by the whole state.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And, the irony, I emailed the state yesterday again. And when I emailed her, an email popped through that she had sent to me on Monday, responding to another email that I had sent like 2 weeks before. She always responds. I have to give her that. And I'm talking about the head state attorney for King County, Illinois. She's always good about responding. Unfortunately, she has no information for me, and her hands are somewhat tied as well. And I think I mentioned that in our emails, is that the law isn't well written around handling of sex offenders.
Yeah, that seems like kind of a bit of a problem.
Well, yeah. And I skimmed through the emails that I've sent, over and over. And sometimes they'll trigger little memories.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I did remember was, and I don't remember who I was talking to. It was somebody with the state right before he was released. And I don't know if it was his actual parole agent, but the gist of the comment was that their whole job is to get them out of jail and into a place to stay. Once they're there, they don't care what happens. In essence, they can go anywhere and do anything, and there's like no repercussion. And as much as you think that these laws are protecting you, they are not.
I wonder if it's the same in every state, or if Illinois is way behind.
Well, I was wondering that myself. Now, and I don't know why Illinois does and other states don't, but Illinois, when you go to the Illinois Department of Corrections website, to the left, they have a whole little menu section. If you go in, you see that they have a sex offender registry. And if you go in there, just in the search section at the very bottom where you would click to search, there's a download all button. And I wonder how long that'll stay up, but there's a download all button, and you can download a list of all the sex offenders in Illinois.
Well, that's handy.
Yes, but they also have a secondary list called the Murderer and Violent Offender Against Youth Registry.
And it's separate.
And that kind of surprised me that there were two. I had never heard of this that I can remember. Now, again, when I talk about the memory triggers, this was something that triggered a partial memory. And I remember talking to the assistant state's attorney at the time who was prosecuting my case, Jody Gleason, and she's now a judge in King County. But she had mentioned to me that he would be put on a list, and it would show that he had murdered a child. And so I don't know if that was the list he was referring to at the time, but I had never put two and two together. And I just sex offender registry kind of covers all bases. But I guess it doesn't in Illinois. There's two. And so I just found this out yesterday.
And which one is he on?
He's not on this one. He's on the sex offender registry, but he's not on the murderers and violent offenders against youth registry.
That's interesting. Of all people who should be, you would think.
Correct. Of all people who should be, he should absolutely be on there, and he's not. And, if I didn't know that this list existed, my guess is there's a majority of people that don't know this list exists.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's an important list because these are the echelon of the offenses,
Yeah, yep. They are the top tier, which you don't want your kids running into anywhere.
No, nowhere do you want your children running into these people, especially because they go after children.
Yeah, exactly. I can't imagine why he's not on there. I mean, his crime was very clearly violent, obviously.
A murder of a child. How does that not? I can't. It blows my mind. I get so frustrated, and I just at some point don't even know what to do anymore. Just with that, and we haven't even touched on what we're going to touch on.
Yeah, the big part. So you're still learning things every day, and this is going back almost 30 years that the whole nightmare started.
Yeah, in 1997. 2 more years, it's 30 years. That's a long time.
Yeah. Well, and it took 9 years to get him into prison in the first place.
Yes.
That's the longest I've ever heard, honestly.
And then, touch on that a little bit, he doesn't even serve all of his probation, parole time, what have you.
Let's talk about that.
Well, you explain.
All I know is he got a DUI, right? Was it in 2022 or 3, somewhere in there?
It was just this last year, 2024. So it would have been January. Yes, because he was supposed to get off of parole at the very beginning of 2024, February 25th. And I want to say it was the second week, maybe, of January. I get a call that he's back in jail. And I find out that he somehow was in an accident on one of the highways, I-90 in Illinois, Cook County, that he was in an accident, had a DUI. From what I understand, he was with another felon. And he gets in this accident. I'm assuming, and I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming it wasn't just a one-person accident. The long and the short is I hear that the car was on fire, then that he was arrested and taken to the hospital. Now, somehow they link this to my case and credit him the time that he served in jail for this DUI. And they allowed him to get off of parole a month early.
That makes no sense at all. He does an extra crime and gets rewarded for it.
He gets rewarded. Yeah. I don't understand it. It just makes no sense.
I don't get it. Even the fact that it got linked in the first place, you would think at worst it should do nothing.
At worst, at best, that he got more time, or they saw that he wasn't fit to be out because he can't behave.
Right. Yeah.
He was drinking on top of all of that. I don't think you're supposed to do that on parole either, because I think he had a restriction on that as well. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but he did talk to the news after he got out. He was in front of his brother's house because they'd originally placed him there, and his brother's a felon. So I called and had conversations with people, and they moved him to Chicago, 6655 South Perry Street. And I feel for the residents of Inglewood and anybody in the surrounding areas, because they don't deserve what the state of Illinois has been doing to them. And I don't think that they understand the extent of what has been going on. And it's easily discovered by that download all button.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone has put it together until now.
I don't know how anybody could and not come out and said something. Like the state of Illinois or the Illinois Department of Corrections have a lovely little database that they use. And if it works like most other databases, when you go in and you plug an address in, it should populate all the people that are living at that address.
You'd think.
And so at one point, when this first came to my attention, there were over 110 sex offenders living in a 12-unit apartment building.
Seems pretty crowded.
You think?
Yeah.
And that's like putting 10 in each apartment. And they're 1 to 3 bedroom apartments, I believe. And I know I sent you the email that I had used when I sent it out. I have a whole spreadsheet of people that I sent that email to, and I got 0 response.
You know, it's not the first extremely corrupt thing that I've heard happening out of Illinois, period, but Kane County in particular.
You know, for those of your listeners who aren't aware, Kane County is just outside of Cook County. It butts up against Cook County in Elgin. And so this is where Quortney passed away. And so if you live in a certain part of the east side of Elgin, you are in Cook County. And if you live on the west side of Elgin, you are in Kane County. And so this happened in Kane County on the west side of Elgin. Ironically, I grew up on the east side of Elgin.
And you went to high school with him, right?
He went to school across town. He did go to school on the west side of Elgin.
Okay.
And so we dated in high school, yes. We dated in high school for a short amount of time and split up. And I got married, had children, and then ran back into him.
Non-coincidentally, it seems.
No, because he's told me since then, I mean, before all of this had happened, after we had gotten together a second time, he told me that he had been purposely putting himself in positions so that I could run into him.
Oh, you mean stalking?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. And at 21, 22, you know, when you have somebody tell you that, you don't necessarily associate it with stalking. After you guys are dating for a little while, yeah, you're like, oh, that's kind of nice that he liked me so much that he put himself in those places. But now going back, it's scary as heck.
Right. Yeah.
Because at any point I can turn around and he could be standing right there.
Knowing he has that skill is pretty disturbing.
Yes. And Illinois did not do what they said they were going to do to protect me and my other daughter.
And that was putting a restraining order, right?
Yeah, protective order, no contact order, depending on, I think, what state you're in. It's called something different. But the gist of it was for him to stay the hell away from me.
Which, really, that should be a no-brainer. I mean, honestly.
It should be a no-brainer. But there's something wrong with the idea that he could move in across the street from me and I have no recourse.
Right. You'd have to leave your home.
Yeah.
I'll pause here for another quick sponsor break. With all of these 110 sex offenders living in one building, there's no way they're actually living there.
Correct. And so, you know, I just looked yesterday and I think I counted 78 sex offenders living in that building, which still is way too many. But that is the current number as of yesterday when I downloaded the list. And now there was some statistics or numbers that I found going through them because there are a lot of sex offenders, an ungodly amount of sex offenders on the sex offender registry that don't even live in a home. They're just homeless. No address. It's listed specifically as homeless.
You can't account for them at all.
And so right now there's 1,504 sex offenders on the list that show as homeless. And those with no address and they just are plain blank are another 1,386.
And what does that mean, I wonder?
I don't know.
I mean, to be registered, what's the point?
And then there's a whole nother set that is listed, another 550 for the Department of Human Services. I don't know what that means either. Does that mean that they're living at the Human Services building? Because I don't think so. And so these all add up to offenders living in these areas or living in places they shouldn't be.
Right.
Specifically, the person in my case.
And if that's how it came to your attention, but the fact that it's this big of a scale is really upsetting.
It's extremely upsetting because not only are they doing it in different parts of Illinois, but it's very centered on Chicago area. Not only Perry Street, I did find the Perry Street address, but when I went through, there were a few other areas that I did find. There were a couple buildings, if you will, where there were 30 or 40. Some of them have 15 in a building. Some of them have 2 or 3 in a building. But you go to the website, the sex offenders website and the Department of Corrections, and it says, if there's a problem or if you know that they're not living there, go to the local police department. Well, the local police department, in my case, for Mr. Williams, has known about this for over a year. And he's been living with his father.
Which he's not supposed to either.
He's not supposed to. His father is a federal felon. And knowing that, I don't understand why they haven't reacted. And now I did tell you I got an email yesterday and the state's attorney was checking in again with the Carpentersville police to see if anything had come to fruition. And now I'm at this point where they've basically indicated to not rock the boat. And I don't rock the boat. And yet it's a year later and he's still sitting there.
At some point, you're going to want to rock the boat.
Right. So I wanted to make sure that the information that I had gotten was accurate. There's a connection that I have that has been able to give me information as to where Mr. Williams is. And it's a solid connection and it's solid information. And this particular person has gone to the Carpentersville Police Department and has explained the situation to them as well. There have been several instances where professionals have come into contact with Mr. Williams, where Mr. Williams has indicated that he does live there, in fact.
And he's still registered at the Perry address.
Correct. Correct. So, yes. And from what I understand, he's working 60 miles away. I mean, this should be a little bit of a flag, is I thought that that's something that he's supposed to provide as far as his registration, where he works. And one of the jobs he is working is at a pumpkin patch where children go.
Right. The main clients.
Yes. And so I don't know if I'm more upset at the pumpkin patch or at the state for allowing this to go on. I mean,
why not both?
I don't know how he got a job there. I don't know if he knows somebody there. I haven't even called out there to let them know.
That should be next. Because you know what? He didn't tell them he's a felon. He didn't tell them he's on the list. And they probably didn't do a background check. I'm betting anything.
Correct.
And you'd think that a place like that would be doing background checks. But hey, you've said it's all about the money. And that's pretty much what it is.
It is. And, I wouldn't even, to be honest, I wouldn't even have thought about doing a background check at a pumpkin patch per se, because usually the parents are there. But there are a lot of children that go by themselves.
Right, exactly. Or, they're with an older sibling or something. And
absolutely. And they get lost or who knows what could happen.
It can even happen with a parent there. They just turn their back for a second.
Absolutely. You've heard of all kinds of children that have disappeared over the years.
Right.
Where their parents just turned around for a split second at the park and they were gone.
Exactly.
And so the irony is that the state knows, the county knows, and the city knows, and nobody does anything. You go back to the Department of Corrections, and it refers you right back to your local police department.
Right. And I mean, if he's off parole, They might have just washed their hands of him, even though he is supposed to be actively registered.
I think that's exactly what they've done. That's what they're doing with all of these. There's absolutely no way that all of these, with that many sex offenders living in that building, you cannot tell me that not one single person went over there, some type of resource person, officer, a therapist, anybody that would have had to have checked on these people. You can't tell me they walked in and said, there's way too many people here. So there can't be. There's not enough. Otherwise, people would say something. So they're using it as a fake address. It's like a P.O. box is really what they're doing. They're using it as a straight up P.O. box.
And why do registered sex offenders, and violent ones at that, I saw more than one murderer on that list, why do they need a placeholder address?
There's just no place for them to go.
Yeah, I guess so, but...
Not that I want to admit that. These people have attacked the most vulnerable section of our society, and they will do it again. And some of them get more and more violent.
And some of them already are.
Some of them already are, but some of them get creative.
Yeah, they know how to hide now. They know how not to get caught.
Yeah, exactly. And those are the ones that scare me the most, because those are the ones that blend in with normal society. Those are the ones that work next to you.
Yeah, at a pumpkin patch.
Those are the ones that have kids that go to school with your kid.
Right, there's no stopping them from doing that.
There's no stopping them. And here's the thing. If the state of Illinois isn't keeping track of them, then nobody is. Except for me now, it seems, apparently. I mean...
You're not getting paid for it. That's no fair.
I'm not getting paid for it. But, I'm looking at this list and I think to myself, it would be easy for somebody like me. I spent several days, but I went through it and I separated the list. And there are a ton of sex offenders. But when it comes down to it, after you take all of them that are still in jail in Department of Corrections or in the county jail, you take the homeless out, the ones with no address, the ones that live out of state, and the ones that have been removed from the country, you have almost 17,000 sex offenders.
And we've lost track of so many of them that you can see right there with no address, no home. That means they could be anywhere. We don't know.
Yeah, they have to live somewhere. They're supposed to be working. So where are they working? Because it doesn't seem to be that they're even keeping track of that anymore. And I've even found all the members of the Sex Offender Management Board, so they may be getting an email pretty quick too. I was looking at the minutes for some of the meetings, and they look like they have 4, maybe 5 meetings a year, and half of them don't even show up.
Yeah, they don't seem to be doing their job.
And so I'm like, 4 meetings a freaking year, and you can't even show up?
What is your actual job? You got to wonder.
Yeah.
And they're getting paid.
Yeah, I don't get it. 22 members and half of them don't show up. But, one of the things that I was going to say, if I remember now, was that when I was looking through the laws and stuff, there were some things that they're supposed to do. So they are supposed to, if I remember, register where they work, where they live, because people need to know that. And I know in Florida, you can see that. You used to, if I remember, be able to see that in Illinois, at least through the Family Watchdog website, if you haven't ever used that.
Is that just Illinois, or does it show you everywhere?
It shows everybody. And so these people that are sitting on the board, there's all these licensure requirements that they're supposed to have, like a sex offender evaluator. They're supposed to have 400 hours of supervised experience in treatment or evaluation of sex offenders in the last 4 years. They have to be a physician, 40 clock hours training in sex offender evaluations. There's all of these things that they have to do. And so I know it has limited the amount of evaluators they can have, but are these evaluators rushing through all of these? I mean, that's an awful lot of sex offenders. Are they saying that they're all good and then they're dropping them off at Perry Street and good luck? That's where I feel we're at. It's just unbelievable.
Does that list show apartment numbers?
Yes, some of them. And I complained and they changed Mr. Williams because I said, it doesn't even have an apartment number on there. That's BS. And so they did put an apartment number in.
Yeah, I see that for him, 2C.
Yes. And here's another thing, too, is I've read articles that the sex offenses in Chicago are on the rise.
Well, no wonder.
Wonder why? This is exactly why. And every resident of Englewood should be up in arms over this. They really should. There's no reason that anybody should be loading up the south side of Chicago with sex offenders. Well, it's going to happen with any area. So I guess they can't let them out of prison until they have a place to go. And so in order to get them out the door, they do this shit.
Yeah, that's got to be it.
Baltimore Avenue in Chicago, there's another one. There's a couple buildings right next to each other that have 5, 10 sex offenders in it. Colfax, Muskegon Avenue.
Yeah.
Muskegon Avenue is another big one. You know, they've got at least 15 or 20 in one of the buildings. But you can see it, and it's slowly growing. Because when I first checked this, there was only like 1 or 2 other buildings that were doing this, and now there's more and more and more. And so I don't know if it's the same owner. I know that the owner of the Perry Street also owns other buildings. I don't know if they're all in Chicago. I haven't checked. I haven't checked in over a year on his stuff, so I'm not quite sure.
If he's found himself a way to make some cash and all it is selling out the entire population of your neighborhood, then great, I suppose.
Oh, they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in 1C?
Must be some bunk beds.
I think so.
That's not a pull-out couch. They'll snuggle in at night, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Time for one last sponsor break.
Here's the crazy thing, too, is the list that you download. Not only does it give you their names, their addresses, it gives you their height, their weight, their race, male or female, their birth dates, they're compliant, not compliant, what county they're in. And then it'll tell how old their victim was, what their crimes were. And so a majority of them living in that building, their victims are all underage. They're all children. 6 years old, 13, 6, 12, 11, 4. They're all young. And so now they've taken all of these and
put them in a neighborhood where families live.
Yeah, out of it, I see maybe 5 victims that were over 18.
Jeez.
5 or 6. Yeah, there's not many. Again, and I can say it over and over. I don't understand.
I don't know who would be able to understand. This is, my mind is just reeling. Like, and you told me this days ago. I've been trying to wrap my brain around it, but the more you tell me, the more I'm just like, what?
You're like, I don't know.
Oh.
I know, and I'm sure there's stuff we've discussed now that I didn't tell you before because, again, like I said, there's so much.
Yeah, you can't keep track of it all.
I'm limited as to what I can research and search. I don't want to spend every waking moment on this, which I probably could.
Oh, yeah. You could fall down that rabbit hole.
Yes, I do fall into rabbit holes a lot, and I get obsessed sometimes with some of this information. And I think I just keep going until I can find out sometimes the why. Why is this happening? Or even how to fix it. It started out for me as this small little issue of mine that has grown into this, holy crap, look at what these people that have been put in charge of the state of Illinois are doing to their constituents, to the people who live there and pay to live there. You know, now this jerk, he's working 20 minutes from where my niece lives.
And now that he's off parole, he could, in theory, live anywhere he wants, any state.
Yes. He just has to register and not be living with a felon. And I don't know, are there that many felons now that sex offenders can't find a place to live without living with a felon? I don't think so.
No, the people who aren't felons just don't want them living there.
That's true. It's true.
Yeah, no thanks, considering what they've done.
And that's the thing, when you have an offense like this, why aren't they going after them stronger? Or, looking for more jail time or finding other ways to prevent them from doing these things? Because a lot of them reoffend.
Yeah, there's no rehabilitation.
There is no rehabilitation. And that's the irony of this. Again, there's so much irony in this whole story. But at one point, Mr. Williams did argue the constitutionality of life in prison.
Get out of here, man. At least you have a life to argue for.
There you go. But his argument, and I can see it, even though I don't want to because I don't want to agree with anything that comes from that. But the argument was that prison is supposed to be rehabilitative. And if you're putting somebody in for life, you're saying that they cannot be rehabilitated.
At some point, some crimes are beyond rehabilitation.
Absolutely.
Someone who does something that he did.
Absolutely. And so, agree with me or not, that's what the death penalty is for.
Right. I see what you mean. Totally.
You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it. I look at it differently than a lot of other people because I have skin in the game, I guess.
Exactly. Oh, you have great reasons to understand these things.
And I wish that he did not walk this earth, but I don't get my wish. I never will, because my wish is that none of this had ever happened and I had never met him. But we can't go back. We can only go forward. And the only thing that I can do is make sure that he's where he's supposed to be.
And clearly he's not. So you're saying he's living with his dad
In Carpentersville, which is in King County, Illinois, just north of I-90. He lives right over by Old Spring Hill Mall. If anybody knows where that's at. Again, ironically, he and I both worked at that particular mall. And the address he's living at is right around the corner from us.
Well, how lovely for him. Nostalgic and everything.
Yeah.
I do not understand what's going on here. It's blown my mind for days. I'm just trying, and you're immersed in this. So I hope you are taking a few minutes off here and there to regroup.
We're remodeling our house.
Yeah, so you're relaxing is what you're saying.
Yes. See, me, I adapt to just about anything. I'm like a chameleon, I swear sometimes. As long as I have a place that I can go and hide from everything, good.
Yes.
But I also grew up in a family with 4 sisters.
You learned how to carve out your space because you had to.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's my relaxation is remodeling.
It does not sound relaxing at all, but as long as you can find your peace in that, that's a good thing.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what it is, finding that peace.
Are you just as fired up as I am right now? Something needs to be done about these issues in Illinois. Just to sum up the problems in a nutshell. 1. Cayce Williams is not living where he's registered and should therefore be arrested and punished. 2. An unlicensed transitional housing facility exists at 6655 South Perry Street in Chicago, and it's not the only one. This is a danger to the community, is not permitted by law, and must be shut down. The operator of this facility, supposedly New Beginnings Recovery Homes Incorporated, as well as the owner of these units, Amer Mustafa, and his company, Link Remarketing LLC, should face penalties. 3. The agencies that ignored the information they were provided about the 2 items above should be held accountable. That includes authorities in Chicago, Carpentersville, and McHenry, Kane, and Cook counties. 4. The Illinois Sex Offender Registry needs more diligent oversight to make sure all of these dangerous people are where they say they are. 5. Illinois parolees are rewarded with shortened sentences for committing parole violations, which needs to stop immediately. How does the rapist and murderer of a baby get a DUI violation during his mandatory supervised release period, and instead of an extended sentence, he's released early as a result? 6. No individual can be registered on both the Illinois State Police Murderer and Violent Offender Against Youth database and the ISP Sex Offender Registry. An individual who, like Cayce Williams, sexually assaulted and murdered a child is, by law, only required to register as a sex offender and cannot also register as a murderer and violent offender against youth. That needs to change. It all needs to change. So what can we do about it? Greta and I are asking for your help. Here's our call to action. On Friday, June 13th, 2025, Quortney Alexandria Kley should be celebrating her 30th birthday. In Quortney's honor, and for the sake of all Illinois children, let's bombard the pertinent offices and agencies with phone calls and emails demanding the immediate correction of these dangerous and unacceptable conditions. I'll create an email template and telephone script addressing the problems, and I'll post the link to that document on my Facebook page. I'll also include a list of the agencies to contact, which will include the Illinois Sex Offender Services Unit, the Illinois Prisoner Review Board, the Illinois Department of Corrections Office of Constituent Services, the Illinois State Police Sex Offender Registration Unit, the Carpentersville Police Department, the McHenry County Sheriff's Office, the Illinois Attorney General's Office, and the Chicago Police Department 7th District. The bigger the public outcry, the more likely an issue is to be addressed. Please look for and share my Facebook post about this campaign using the hashtag #DemandChangeIL. On Friday, June 13th, please take a few minutes to make these phone calls or flood these agencies with emails. They need to know the public won't stand for the status quo when it's rewarding sex offenders and other criminals while turning a blind eye to dangerous and fixable issues in Illinois communities. My sources for this episode were the Illinois State Police Sex Offender Registry, the Illinois Department of Corrections, the Englewood Portal, Change.org, CBS 2, ABC 7 Eyewitness News, the Lake McHenry County Scanner, and Greta Morgan. A couple quick shoutouts before I sign off, and these are shoutouts to my first 2 YouTube channel members. Hello and welcome to Layla G. and Tony E. Thank you so much for your support. You can become a channel member or a Patreon member for similar perks. Look for those links in the show notes. That's it for this episode. Join me next time for another child's story. If you like the show, please follow or subscribe to Suffer the Little Children on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast listening app. And please leave me a 5-star rating and a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. Visit the website at sufferthelittlechildrenpod.com. You can support the show by visiting patreon.com/stlcpod, where you can become a patron for rewards ranging from a shout-out by name on the show to exclusive gifts. You can also support the show at ko-fi.com/stlcpod. Follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Suffer the Little Children Pod and on TikTok at STLCpod. View photos related to today's episode on Facebook. This podcast is researched, written, hosted, edited, and produced by Lane. Intro theme music is by Dream Note Music, and all music for the show is licensed from audiojungle.net. For more information about preventing or reporting child abuse, visit childhelp.org or call your area's child abuse hotline. And remember, if you see something, say something.